Hello and welcome to another episode of the Maxi-Geek Show. Today is Friday, March 24th, and this is episode number 54. Before we get into the news this week, I just wanted to let you know we're trying a new format. Now the show will be 30 minutes long, or around then. Recent episodes have ballooned to well at over an hour, so we're just trying to rein things back in. This week was a quiet one, with the Game Developers Conference taking place in San Francisco, and now PAX East this weekend in Boston. A lot of companies were involved in one or both of the events, which kept things quiet across the board. Of course, there was a Future Games show by Games Radar this morning, but most of the content in there was either known or so far out in terms of release dates, it was hard to get excited for it. Speaking of release dates, we have a slew of them to update you on, but first, the tickets for PAX Australia 2023 have gone on sale. So as you may be aware, you may not be aware, PAX Australia have announced that tickets are now available in the 3-day pass, so that'll cover you for the Friday, Saturday and Sunday, along with the individual day passes for Friday, Saturday or Sunday. These are the early bird prices. They are a little cheaper than they would be normally. Prices for the 3 days at the early bird price start at $175. So that'll get you access to everything starting at 10 o'clock on the Friday, running through to like 11 p.m. Friday night. Same for Saturday, and then I think it's 10 to 6 on the Sunday. For the people who are going for just 1 day or maybe just 2 days, like Saturday or Sunday, tickets for the individual days are $70 each. Again, these prices are for the early bird only. They are not the permanent prices. So once the first sort of batch of tickets are gone, then the actual cost will go up on both 3-day and individual day passes. This is actually a bit of a specialty. This will be the 10th anniversary of the show. The first PAX Australia was held back in 2013 at the Melbourne Showgrounds. And if you were like me and you attended, you'll have some memories of the tents that connected all the buildings, because it was set in the middle of the year. It was set in July, so it was set in the middle of a Victorian winter. So nice that the organisers knew what they were going for. Maybe it would have been a little bit better if they had moved everything into the one building. Of course, with the 10th anniversary, they're likely going to have things going on for it. The problem is, like all these sort of early ticket sales things, they've not announced anything. So we don't know which companies will be there in terms of video games. So last year, all PlayStation, Nintendo, and Xbox were all absent. That may be the case this year. We may see 1 or 2 of them show up. Ubisoft wasn't there last year. They may show up this year. Who knows? Last year, the games area felt more like a bit of a tech show, because there were no video game companies. It was more so just related to the hardware side of things. The tabletop area, that was still very much like it has been in years past. A lot of people playing various games there. BYOC was there. Obviously, the panels were all carried on throughout the day in the various theaters. The lounge, I can't think of the name of it. It's the one. It is the one where it's like it doesn't matter, what type of person you are. This is the inclusive lounge. It's the one that has the gender neutral bathrooms nearby. That'll likely be back again this year. So a lot of the things you expect to be there will be there, but until we get closer to the show, we just don't know how that's going to shake out. Moving on from there, we actually had news break over the weekend, last weekend just gone, that a wave of classic Dungeons and Dragons games are coming back to PC, some of them for the first time in more than 25 years. So there's actually, they said 8 games, but technically 5 games, and one game has a bunch of it's a main series, and there's a bunch of sub games in that series. So these games are all being done by a company called SNEG. Now, prior to this story, I hadn't heard of them. They're a very niche company. Their entire focus is on taking games that were made for PC back in the 80s and 90s, and making them run on modern PCs. Now, this is not like Night Dive Studios, who have their Kex engine, or Limited Run Games, who have the Carbon engine. Those guys, they update and tweak things to get them to work properly, right? SNEG's entire approach is to get the game running without modification. By that, I don't mean, they're not going to change the code. What I mean is they're going to ensure that the gameplay and the visuals and all the aspects of the game that you might remember are kept intact. So the 8 games, some of them are available now on both Steam and GOG. Some of them are still to come over the next couple of days or so. But we've got Dragon Strike, which was released in 1990, Spelljammer Pirates of Realm Space from 1992, Fantasy Empires from 1993, Heroes of the Lance from 1988, Dragon of the Flame from 1989. So when I say that these games are being kept in their original format, the actual, they're not cleaning up the visuals, as you can see here from this screenshot. Everything's being kept the exact way it was for, how it first released back on, maybe the 186 and all that sort of stuff. So Deathkeep here in 1995 is the most recent of these titles. If you are someone who's a Dungeons & Dragons fan and you've never played these games, I do caution going in that some of them will play, we'll just say they're going to be clunky. This is not a knock on the work these guys are doing. This is not a knock on the original developers of the games. But when these games were developed, the amount of resources available for development of games on computers, the input methods, all that stuff was very, very different. That's why companies like Night Dive and Limited Run, when they do port their titles over, they do have a bit more success because they do modernize a whole lot of these things. But again, these are all PC games, so they do exist, on PC. So the mouse and keyboard input hasn't changed at all, in the past 30, 40 years. So these should work without too much hassle. But just be aware that some of them will be, they're not going to be as fluid as you might be expecting. But yeah, so the company themselves, they started back up in 2020. When everyone was going to the work from home model because of COVID-19. This is when Oleg Klepovsky started up this company in SNEG to start, resurrecting these classic games. So again, these aren't exactly going to be, chart toppers, but with Dungeons & Dragons having a big year this year, the new movie comes out in just a few days with Chris Pine, and the boys from Artie Donna are in it as well, doing some voice work. It should, it's a bit of a big year for Dungeons & Dragons, which will tie back into PAX because they'll likely have a big thing going on there. Moving away from Dungeons & Dragons, though, we're going to talk LEGO, specifically about the fact that LEGO 2K Drive was officially announced overnight. So LEGO, you may have seen this news already. LEGO 2K Drive, not the most fluid of names. IGN unfortunately went live a day early with the story, which, these things do happen. But they quickly pulled it, but unfortunately it's the internet. Once it's out, it's out. But LEGO 2K Drive is being developed by Visual Concepts. This is the same group that are responsible for the NBA 2K and the WWE 2K series of games. So they just shipped WWE 2K23 last week, and LEGO 2K Drive will release in May. The big thing with this one is that, like in the NBA series, it'll be coming to all consoles and PC, so Switch is included in that. The WWE games miss Switch, but they hit everything else. This is essentially going to be an open world, LEGO racing game. So the big thing with this is that it is all based around, customization. There are over 1,000 pieces of LEGO that you can use to... The spelling is being weird. That you can use to build up your car. So if I scroll down here, we can see here, this is the hamburger car. So it's not just, a different style of wheel. It's, you can change the color of the wheel. You can change the length of the car, the size of the car, right? The various aspects around building with LEGO are all being incorporated here in terms of a racing game. In terms of the events, we know that there's going to be standard races. We know there's going to be time trials. We know there's going to be challenges. But it is an open world racer. So It's not just, going from race to race to race, from a menu, like say Mario Kart, but it's going to be more like Forza Horizon. Which obviously brings up the big comparison. Forza Horizon 4 had their LEGO Speed Champions DLC, which basically sort of set the groundwork for this in my mind. Clearly they're not connected, different developers, different publishers, but I think it sort of gave LEGO the idea that, hey, maybe a more open world LEGO game can work. We do know that, so McLaren will be featured in the game. The McLaren car is even in the key art. You can see the McLaren sticker on the front of this car here. So the big thing with the cars is, again, so cars are one of the things you can drive. A plane body type, right? There's a monster truck, there's boats. So if you watch some of the gameplay, you'll see them actually doing, sort of like the Crew 2 style of game where, they're in a car and then as they drive into water, they don't just sink to the bottom, they turn into a boat and off they keep going. As this is a LEGO game, they're making full use of the license. So there's, LEGO City, LEGO Creator, Speed Champions, and then there was another one that they said afterwards, bringing all those themes in. So it's not going to be, completely original stuff. It's, existing themes that you can go out to, your Big W or your Target and pick up actual sets from them. The only thing that sort of concerns me, well, not concerns, but let me put it this way. The only thing that I'm sort of, let down by is that the world itself is the same style that the Traveller's Tales LEGO games have been, in that LEGO's only used for things. So you've got the LEGO cars, you've got the LEGO people on the screen, but the trees, the moon, the ground all looks like, it's from a regular non-LEGO game, right? You've got a LEGO spaceship crashing into realistic dirt. All right, so the houses are all LEGO-fied, but the mountain they're built on or built into doesn't have that same impact. Obviously, we've seen a few other games recently come out, like LEGO Brick Tales came out late last year. They've got an Easter DLC coming out soon, where they go full LEGO, right? And to me, that brings you into the experience more because it lets you see everything in LEGO form. This is not going to be that way. Obviously, though, with the way things are going, with the 2K games, we might see more of the evolution of this going forward. We might see things changing a little bit more depending on how the game is received. Interestingly, there is another 2K LEGO game on the way. We don't know details beyond the fact that it's going to be a sports game, and rumors point to a soccer game. And the developer, or the rumored developer for this, is Sumo Digital. Now, the reason why this is kind of funny is Sumo Digital are sort of racing experts, right? They've done the Sonic racing games. They're the developers of that. They did the kart racing for Disney Infinity a number of years ago. And they've done a few other racing games as well, over the last decade or so. So they've really sort of, cut their teeth on racing, right? They know it. They helped with some of the Forza Horizon 5 stuff. What I think is quite hilarious is that the sports studio, Visual Concepts, are doing the racing game, and the racing studio are doing the sports game. One could argue that, yes, as Sumo Digital is based in the UK, they may have a more accurate feeling for soccer or for football, depending on which part of the world you live in. So that may be why it's gone that way, but it's just sort of a bit funny, that the sports studio is not making the sports game. As this is a 2K game, though, they have complicated the release of it. So as I said, it is coming out on May 16th for PlayStation, Xbox, PC, and Switch. All the versions of the game will be released in a Standard Edition, the Awesome Edition, and the Awesome Rivals Edition. The Standard Edition for PS4, Xbox One, PC, and Switch will be $89.95 here in Australia. The PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S versions will be $99.95. The PC version in the Standard will be available in stores. It's the only way to get the game physically, and I say physically in quotes there, for PC. Everything else will be digital. The Awesome Edition is coming to all platforms. It will be available in stores except for PC. So if you have, a Switch or a PlayStation 5, you can get this one physically in stores. If you have it on PC, you have to go digital only. This will be $149.95. It'll come with a new vehicle options, an in-game LEGO minifigure that's exclusive to the edition, and access to the Year 1 Drive Pass. That'll feature 4 seasons worth of content that will release. I'd like to say over a 12-month period, but 2K tend to push that stuff out pretty quickly. Marvel's Midnight Sun released in December. We're already on our 3rd of the 4 characters, and we're not even at the end of the 3rd month of the year, so they tend to push that stuff out pretty quickly. The Awesome Rivals Edition is essentially the same stuff as the Awesome Edition, except instead of 1 vehicle, you get multiple. The problem is they've not clarified if it's multiple means 2 or 3 or 4. They've just said multiple. Outside of that, everything else is the same. Vehicle options, in-game minifig, access to the drive pass for year 1. This is a digital only offering, so if you want the big version, you have to go digital. Now this is where things get a little crazy. The price for this one is $179.90. So if you buy the Switch Standard or PlayStation 4 Standard Edition, that's $90. If you double the price, you can get a few extra cars and a Season 1 pass. So there's a lot of content in it, obviously. We don't know the size of the game in the grand scheme of things, but it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out in the long run. Because, again, 2K are offering up, 4 seasons worth of content. So we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. Moving away from cute and cuddly in terms of Lego, until you stand on one, we're going into the world of shooters with the confirmation that Counter-Strike 2 is happening. So Valve announced during the week that Counter-Strike 2 is happening and will be releasing this winter. The game itself will be launching into a technical test phase for invited players only. If you are invited, if you want to be invited, you have to be playing Counter-Strike Global Offensive now. You have to have an account in good standing, and you have to be a trusted member of the community. So what that means is that you can't, play it today for 5 minutes, jump in, be a tool, and expect to get into this. They're going to invite, sort of the big players first, and then they'll start rolling it out to other players as we get closer to the full release. The big thing that they wanted to call out is the fact that all the weapon skins, weapon attachments, and everything that players have spent years unlocking and earning in Global Offensive will be available. It'll all transfer across to Counter-Strike 2, so you don't have to worry about that. The big thing with this one is that it is going to be an upgrade from Counter-Strike Global Offensive. So if you own that game, you'll get this one for it. Now, I'm not going to play all the videos here, but they do have a video about how smoke is going to be different, right? So they're not just making, the map shinier, making use of the Source 2 engine. The smoke, for example, is now a 3D volumetric object, whereas previously it was a bunch of essentially JPEGs all stitched together to provide the illusion of depth. You couldn't see through smoke. It made things more of a challenge, but that didn't do anything. Now the smoke will actually interact with the environment. So if you throw it in a pipe, instead of just sitting in the middle of the pipe, it'll actually start to spread out through the pipe. If you throw it into an open area, you'll be able to shoot through it. And when you shoot through it, your bullets will displace the smoke. So there's a lot more going on for that. Something else they've also done is the world. So leveling up the maps themselves, they classified them into 3 categories. The one that I think people will be very happy for is the just the upgrade, right? And that's just the visual upgrade, right? Moving the maps from Source 1.0 engine to Source 2.0. So if I scroll down here, so as you can see, this is Dust 2. On their official website, they actually have a slider, so you can go back and forth between the GO version and Counter-Strike 2 version. Basically, everything's just a lot brighter. So instead of making things darker and grittier and all that sort of stuff, they've gone the other way. The layout is the same, the objects are in the same positions, the line of sight for down the main corridor, the main shooting alleyway there. That's all this. Everything's in the same position. They've just sort of made things brighter. The other one is they've showed off is Nuke. Nuke is obviously a lot cleaner. It's a lot brighter, and then things like Overpass all look much better. The big thing, obviously, though, with this game, as I said, is that it is going to be an upgrade from Counter-Strike Global Offensive. So it's kind of funny because Counter-Strike was originally a mod for Half-Life. Counter-Strike 1.6 is where it became its own thing. That's when I started playing it. And then Counter-Strike Source was like, they ported 1.6 to the Source engine when Half-Life 2 released. And then Counter-Strike Global Offensive came out a number of years ago. Obviously there was that Xbox version, but we're not talking about that at the moment. And now Counter-Strike 2. So, you know, it's been 25-ish years since Counter-Strike first sort of launched originally. And we're only on the second version of the game, whereas, you know, other games from other studios have had, you know, some big, you know, many iterations of their franchise in that same time. So yeah, I think it's very, very cool that they're doing this. Obviously there is no set date yet, it's just marked as winter, but you know, for winter, who knows exactly what that means. It could mean you know, the 1st of June, it could mean the 31st of August. We'll just have to wait and see. Moving on from that, as I said, GDC was taking place during this week, and there was a lot of information around the tech side of things. So GDC is the Game Developers Conference. So games do not get announced here. This is where Unreal show up and they say, hey, this is our new version of our Unreal Engine, right? Stuff like that. One of the companies that were on hand during the Unreal panel was Ninja Theory, because they showed off the facial animation tech for MetaHuman in a pretty amazing way. So MetaHuman is the facial animation system that Unreal Engine 5 has that lets you create, if you're a game developer, lets you create a realistic looking human face without any sort of the niggles that generally come with manually creating them. What this means is that they are able to do a lot more with a lot less. So let me just show you this. So this video is it's a brief video, and it's literally showing you the capture of the actress's face. This is the model. This is not a real person. So this is how good this is, right? Obviously, you know, looking at things, you can see that it's not a real person. But what is really, really impressive about this is that the capture performance, it doesn't require dots all over the face. This was all captured by an iPhone. Not one of the new fancy ones like the iPhone 14 or 13. This was captured by like an iPhone 11, I think it was, they said. All it needs is the infrared camera at the front, which is what most iPhones use for the Face ID. And with that, they're able to capture everything. We'll see it in a moment at the end of the video. But this is captured in real time via an iPhone and Unreal Engine 5. So because of all that coming together, it lets the developers create this small, you know, little thing. So here we go. There you go. That's the rig, right? Now, when we've seen in Avatar, even Avatar: The Way of Water, the one that just came out, you know, the Marvel movies, you know, the DC movies, whenever they have an actor that has to have a digital face replacement or, you know, prosthetics or something like that, you know, they have dots all over their face so they can track the micro expressions and all that. This is doing all that from a phone. That is how powerful Unreal Engine 5 is. So I wanted to sort of highlight that because it is one of those things where you look at it and you go, oh, they're cool, you know, that's cool tech, you know, the textures look great. But when you can see how much more it can do outside of, you know, just textures, that's when things get really, really cool. Moving on, we're going to talk about some Battlefield games being delisted because that is what's happening. So during the week, Electronic Arts and DICE announced that 3 classic Battlefield games will be removed from digital storefronts next month, just in a couple of weeks actually, in preparation for their servers going offline in December. So Battlefield Bad Company, Battlefield Bad Company 2, and Battlefield 1943, the one that most people tend to forget exists, will all be taken offline. When I say offline, if you own the game, you'll be able to re-download it. That's fine, that's not changing. But you just won't be able to buy it new going forward. Obviously, the reason for this is that the servers are going offline at the end of the year. If there's no multiplayer servers for a Battlefield game, there's generally no Battlefield game, especially these days. For Battlefield Bad Company 1 and 2, that's not really an issue if there's no online servers because both of those offer a fantastic campaign. Honestly, if you've not played them, you're doing yourself a disservice. With that being said, you know, it's just more the, you know, if you don't own them and you want to, you'll have to get in and buy them in the next few weeks because once they're taken off digitally, it'll just be the second-hand retail, you know, buying it on Xbox or PlayStation because obviously PC requires code activation and that won't be a thing, especially because they haven't sold that new in a number of years. Moving on, we're going to go through a few release dates that all got announced during the week for various titles. Some of them you may have actually forgotten were even announced. The first game that got a release date is Aliens Dark Descent, which is coming out on June 20th, for PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. This is a tactical, isometric role-playing game. Let me just jump in here so you can see a little bit of footage. So this is another Aliens game from Focus Entertainment. They're the folks that did... oh god, I forgot the name of it. They just did the Pathogen DLC like a year ago. And that was the sort of 3-person squad shooter game. So this is probably more akin to like an XCOM experience, is probably the better way to describe it. But it's set within the Aliens universe. There isn't too much more about it, so it's just because it did get a release date. It wasn't announced like 9 months ago, and it's been radio silent ever since. So if you've forgotten that this game was even a thing, that is not surprising. Also announced during the week was the release date for Crash Team Rumble. So Crash Team Rumble is the weird fighting brawling game that Toys for Bob, the folks who did the Spyro Reignited trilogy, are working on. This is a 4v4 multiplayer game where you have to go through and collect, the Wumpa fruits. Once you have enough, then you can start, depositing them and laying the smack down. It's weird. It's not quite, like a Smash Brothers Street Fighter fighting game, but it's not quite like a Mario Party thing. It's kind of a mix between the two. We do know the game will release on June 20, so the same day as Aliens. So, two vastly, different genres there. But this is only for PlayStation and Xbox. So PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S will be the platforms for this one. If you do pre-order it, the team are hosting a beta next month on April 20 through 24, which will give you a few days of play, within it. There is no word yet on if you'll be able to access it if you pre-order the game in stores. At the moment, it's a digital-only pre-order. Also announced during the week was the release date for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre is coming on August 18th, and much like Crash Team Rumble, there will be a technical test taking place on the 25th of May. This one obviously is a very different beast than that one. This is obviously based around the Texas Chainsaw movie, which was released in 1974. That movie is 50 years old next year. So this is a multiplayer focused sort of Dead by Daylight-esque survival game. I'm not going to go too much into it because it is, there's a lot going on in this, especially if you're not into horror games or gory games. So one of the big things is that the game is a 3v4 cat and mouse style thing. So the members of the family will be hunting down, the wayward people, if you will. They did get some of the actors from the movie back in for bits and pieces. The game is coming to PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, and it will launch in the Game Pass on day one, so Xbox and PC players will be able to enjoy it there. As I said, the technical test is taking place on the 25th. No specific word yet on how you'll access that, but that should come out in the next few weeks or so. Just announced today, we have word that Lord of the Rings Gollum finally has another release date. So this is a stealth survival game, so where you take control of Gollum, and obviously as Gollum, he's not, equipped to deal with, direct combat against large armored enemies. So a lot of the focus is around, sneaking around and distracting enemies. The game is set to release on May 25th for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. The game is coming, or at least for now, it is coming to Switch. But like most multi-platform games, Switch will come a few months later. There's no set date for it yet. It will eventually come sometime later in the year. Let me just jump ahead in the trailer here. So this is obviously going to be one of those unique games where you're either going to enjoy what it's offering or you're not. If you've played, there were 2 games on Xbox One, Sticks, where you're this sort of size character and you had to put out torches to create darkness so you could sneak across rooms and all that sort of stuff. If you're into that sort of stealth action gameplay, not Splinter Cell action, but things like that, this will probably appeal to you. Obviously, it is set within the Lord of the Rings universe. It is an original tale. It's not going to take from, it's not, retelling sections from the book. So it is something to be aware of. Again, it is coming on the 25th of May to, Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. Finally, the last game that got a release date happened during the Future Games show, and that is that Park Beyond will hit Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC on June 16th. So we knew this game was coming. It was announced a while ago. It was announced back in 2021. Back then they said it was going to be 2023, so it's been in development for a while. The big thing with this one is that it is what they call an impossification theme park creator. So you can see here's a carousel, but it's not a single carousel. It goes up multi-stories. You saw there a Ferris wheel, but it's not just a single Ferris wheel. It is, a Ferris wheel that has, multiple wheels on multiple levels. So you can create a roller coaster where the track doesn't actually connect the whole way through, because you have a cannon at one point and shoots your car from the cannon across to another side of the park where it connects to the rest of the coaster track. So we do know there will be, if I can skip ahead here, there will be some Pac-Man themed content if you pre-order the game. So some Pac-Man rides, items, balloons, all that sort of stuff. And there will also be some zombie access as well. With that stuff though, it is all pre-order based at the moment. So if you pre-order the game, you get access to it. There is no word on if you'll be able to get that separately later on. The game will obviously support just the standard sort of campaign mode where you'll be given objectives you've got to meet, have enough money, keep the park clean, guest satisfaction high, all while, researching and creating all these new rides. And then there's also going to be a sandbox mode to ensure that if you do have things that you want to just do without any sort of worry, you can just jump in and, have a bit of chaos. Finally, we're going to talk about the games coming out over the next 7 days. Obviously, today was a bit of a big day with Resident Evil 4 and Atelier Ryza 3, Alchemist of the End and The Secret Key, all coming out today. Next week on the 28th, which is the Tuesday, will be a big day. We'll see The Last of Us Part 1 finally come to PC. It was due out earlier in the month. They delayed it a few weeks to give themselves a bit more time. MLB The Show 23 will be launching for all platforms, all console platforms I should say, next Tuesday as well. That will be available here via retail through the Gamesman. They're importing a bunch of copies for both Xbox, PlayStation and Switch. If you do have an Xbox though, it will be available in Game Pass on day one, so you'll be able to enjoy it there. Speaking of Xbox, Sifu will also get its release on the 28th for Xbox. The game exists on PlayStation, PC and Switch already. The 28th is also when the Arenas update will launch for Xbox, PC and PlayStation, so Switch owners are left out of that one. And finally, Crime Boss Rockay City will launch its first chapter on the 28th. The game, while built sort of more like a Grand Theft Auto, is more akin to Payday, so just be aware of that if you're hanging out for that one. 2 days later, on the Thursday, we will see the release of Dredge from Black Salt Games over in New Zealand. This game is coming to all platforms, so PC, PlayStation, Xbox and Switch. PC players will get two other titles that day: The Great War Western Front, which we've talked about previously before on the show, and Ravenbound, which is an action roguelike title from Systemic Reaction is the name of the studio, but it's part of the Avalanche Group. Finally, Saga of Sins will release for all platforms as well on the 30th. The 31st will see the release of Blade Assault, which is another roguelike game, and that's coming to all consoles on that day. And that's brilliant. That's the extent of the games coming out next week. With that said, it does bring us to the end of the show. If you are following us for the first time, please do give us a follow on Twitch, or a follow, a subscribe and a like on YouTube. That does really help us out. For everything about these games, everything about these stories that we talked about tonight, and those that didn't even make it into the show, be sure to follow along Maxi-Geek on all your social channels. We'll be there all the time with news, reviews and everything else. Otherwise, we'll catch you when we're online next time, but until then, happy gaming.